Hello and welcome to the August edition of the Recruiting Insider. This is Kelly Anderson, and we have got a whole bunch of people still getting signed in as I'm saying hello. And we had 960 registrants for today's webinar, and I do not take that lightly, and just really appreciate everybody signing in. By the way, just a couple of quick announcements before we get started. Do want to make you aware of I am going to conduct my Master Recruiting Techniques Conference at the American Trucking Association on September 19th and through the 21st. You can go to masterrecruitingtechniques.com and see the website that announces that and gives you more information about it. But you should be getting an email about it probably today. I'm finishing it up as I speak, and well, okay, not as I speak. Just before I got on here, I was working on it. I'm looking for final feedback from a couple of folks, and then it will be blasted. So you guys ought to get that to you today. But masterrecruitingtechniques.com, and you'll be able to see the information on it. Our next Recruiting Insider call is going to be on September 13th. I will be in Nashville speaking at the HireRight Conference, and don't take that lightly one bit, but I'll be able to slip into a room, do this presentation from Nashville then. And without further ado, I would like to welcome our guest, Amanda Gallegos. She's the Director of Risk Management from Stewart Transport. And Stewart and Amanda, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
You bet. I am. So now you're on Pacific time. So I think you were saying earlier you were there around way before 8 o'clock, and a few of the operations people walking in thinking they can just visit with you, and you're like, leave me alone. I've got to get on a webinar.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Amanda, I am so glad that you have agreed to participate in this webinar, because Stewart is doing some phenomenal things related to driver retention and the reduction thereof. And before we go into those slides, I do need to take just a moment, and I want to thank HireRight for their support of the Recruiting Insider webinar, and also Ramsey Media Works. And folks, Matt Lee will not be on the call today. He is actually at the Dallas Truck Show. So if you're at the Dallas Truck Show or going to be there, look for Matt. He'll be walking around with Garrett Ramsey and visiting some of our clients and such, and taking a few folks to dinner. So anyway, Matt's not on the call today, and that's probably a good thing, because Amanda and I have got lots to talk about. So we'll get double time for Matt next time. But do remember, if they continue to add to it's called recruitingsessions.com, and they got some really great educational video snippets out there relating to driver recruitment advertising and such on recruitingsessions.com. And Matt is just absolutely he's informative, he's extremely knowledgeable, but he's also very funny. And I sit on the edge of my seat watching those sessions that they put together. You're wondering what they're going to do next. But let's get into this conversation with Amanda. And so Amanda, you guys were looking at reducing your turnover rate. And
correct.
Yeah, and so as you started looking at it, now your retention wasn't bad. On the next slide, we're going to talk about that. But as you started thinking about this project, you had some concerns, and you want to go ahead and share and maybe tell us more about the two that we have listed here, and any additional you want to bring up?
So when we started this project, our biggest concern was that for so long, turnover was just an HR and recruiting problem. It wasn't a whole company problem. It was, well, HR, the recruiters have to deal with that. And we were really concerned that people weren't going to buy in. We have all different types of, people here. We have different personalities. And we thought, how are we going to get all of our support staff to buy into this project? Because if they don't, it's not going to work. So the other issue that we really had was that, just like a lot of carriers, some of our employees have multiple responsibilities. Our managers are overwhelmed. They don't really have time to do this anyways. How are we going to really kind of fit this into everybody's schedule? And how is it going to become just sort of a daily thing? Um, our concern was that only certain people were going to buy into the project and only certain people were going to work towards the goal. And we knew that that was never going to work. So we talked about it and we realized that, kind of putting the effort towards starting this project was pretty minimal compared to the time and money that we were basically wasting on continually filling these empty trucks just over and over again.
Absolutely. And, we find that 75% of turnover happens in the first 90 days of employment. And I have a calculator, and I certainly don't mind sharing it with anybody if I haven't already given it to them, called Days to Break Even. And one thing that we find, when you look at your recruiting cost and then your revenue that you make, and then you compare that to your OR, the truth is, and I thought that I was going to find that most companies would break even on their hiring costs anywhere from 4 to 6 months. And actually, every company that I've plugged into that, it's been about 8 months from the day that you hire the driver or recruit the driver until you have recouped all that money. Is 8 months. So if these folks are leaving inside of 8 months, it costs you more to put them on than you recruit. So, there's a little side note. So you had a little concern as you thought about starting this project. And so, but let's talk about, what the stats are. And so
Sure.
describe this to us and tell us where we're at.
So we're a fairly small carrier. We have about 103 power units right now. When we started this project, we had 12 open trucks. Today, we have 102 filled. So, and we are consistently continuing to hire drivers. It's been much easier since we started this program, which we can talk about that in a little bit. We're a refrigerated carrier. We run all 48 states. We concentrate on the Western 11. Like I said before, when we started, we were at about 76%, which was totally unacceptable for us. Currently, after 8 months into the program, we are sitting at 50%. We calculate our turnover rolling 12 months. So this is 50% turnover since last August. If we calculated our turnover just from when we started the program, which was, I think, the end of January, we are actually at 34% turnover. So we
wow, so you cut your turnover rate in over half.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
All we need is those last few months to drop off, and then you'll be sitting there.
And that's exactly what we're waiting to happen. So it's been a really good journey so far.
That is so exciting. Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about how you did it. So, first off, you have some proactive communication. And I guess maybe a chance, here's a place for me to mention as part of this project. I came out there and I did a seminar on a Saturday, and you had your entire team there. And there was some concern from some folks, and maybe some, bringing in some baggage of what they expected. And do you want to mention real quick that, during that seminar, kind of what happened with frankly, the transformation of some folks?
Well, just like probably any other company, it was kind of like pulling teeth to get all of our staff here, support staff, on a Saturday. And it was everyone from the mechanics that work on our trucks, our payroll people, all the way up to the CEO. It was absolutely mandatory, and we had 100% attendance there. But, people kind of come in eye rolling and like, oh, another, we have to do this. And we weren't really sure what was going to happen. So as Kelly started his program and walked us through it, we could literally see people that I thought, man, we're really going to have a hard time with, this driver manager. He doesn't buy into this stuff. And I look over and he's taking notes and he's asking questions. And that was kind of the first sign that, like, okay, this program might actually work. I mean, we had mechanics in there asking questions about what they can do with the drivers. And we had people that, I personally thought weren't really going to buy into the program bought into it day one. And by the end of the class, everyone was so pumped up and we were so ready and everyone was on the same page that it was like we were with different employees, honestly. So that's kind of where we started.
Well, and the other thing that I remember is that you sent me a message, and people after the meeting were talking. On Sunday they were talking, and Monday morning they came in engaged with moving forward on this project.
Yep, we had staff from all different departments sending us emails all weekend. Hey, let's do this. Let's try this. I got an idea for this. And it wasn't just the HR department. It wasn't just our recruiters. It wasn't just, the key managers that kind of keep things afloat. It was everybody. It really was everybody.
That's excellent. I will tell the audience, I thought about not saying this and hope I don't live to regret saying this, but, at the end, at the beginning of the seminar, we talk about, hey, here's your turnover rate. Here's what the average number of empty trucks has been. This is what it cost us to lose a driver. So here's the number. This is, it's millions of dollars. Here's our lost revenue because we got 12 trucks sitting against the fence. And so here's the revenue we didn't make, on 12 trucks per day. And also just to sit there and rust, here's what those trucks are costing us, so everybody sees the number. And I do that so that they understand, you're like, oh man, why am I here on a Saturday? Well, real quickly, they understand it's pretty important why we're here on a Saturday. And so at the end of the seminar, as we go through the seminar, we create these action lists. And because we talk about an issue, questions are asked, and solutions are decided upon to proactively address those issues. And so we log all of those. And you're going to talk, that's part of what we're talking about here in the proactive communication. We're going to go back here in a second, but I got to tell him what I said to Colin, and I was so glad that he laughed. But we get to the end, and we ask the audience, so, how much do you think we could reduce the turnover rate if we implement all these, or when we implement all these action items? And the group decided 50%. They were going to cut it in half. And by the way, they've done it. Well, Colin and I said, okay, well, we're going to do about 50%, but by when? And Colin says 90 days. Colin's the president of the company, and he says 90 days. And I looked at him and I said, sir, I believe that you are smoking weed. And the entire, of course, during the seminar, we had lots of fun anyway. We laughed, and frankly, many times it got very emotional. And so we all laughed, and I was glad that he laughed as well. Just saying. And but I told the audience then, I said, he says 90 days. Guys, if you believe it, then absolutely let's jump on it. But if you don't believe it, let's not tell our boss what we can't do. Let's tell him what we can do. Let's tell him what we're willing to do and what we will do. And we all decided to do it in 6 months. And if you look at from the date of the seminar, we've done it. The rolling average is still coming down. So it was just extremely powerful. Then it got very emotional when Colin gave his final, his closing remarks. And he says, Kelly, you questioned whether we could do it in 90 days. He says, I'll tell you why I said 90 days, because you don't know my people. You don't understand what these folks can do. And I mean, it got intense. It got real. And I still remember that to this day and respect it. And like I said before we got online, Amanda, I plan to come out there for the party and throw a party for the accomplishment. But getting back into the proactive, let's really get down to the weeds now. So proactive communication. What's this about? What's this weekly email? What does it do?
So since we took the class, every week we send an email out to every single employee in the company. We're extremely transparent about our turnover numbers and about what our percentage is, who we lost, why we lost the driver. And before, it was kind of just discussed, within HR, maybe a couple managers. And now everyone knows what's going on. So if someone leaves voluntarily, we're talking about it. This weekly email that we send has our turnover number on it, and so everyone knows exactly where we're at. And then also it has our goals on there, so we know, what number we're working towards. And then below that, which is usually kind of the most important thing, is our action item, which is from the seminar. And action items can, be a reminder about, hey, when a driver walks up to your desk, you need to stop what you're doing and acknowledge them. Or maybe it's something about managing your own stress. And we just try and concentrate on that specific action item for that week being. What has happened over the course of a couple of weeks and months when we really started to get into it, my department managers were coming to me and saying, hey, I'm still having a problem with my staff not acknowledging drivers or not calling them back in time. Can you pick an action item that goes to that so we can make sure that we talk about it with them and we know that we're noticing it. So it kind of became a sort of a communication board for all of our managers to kind of remind our staff and really make it tailored to what was happening in our specific week that week or what was going on. So it was a really kind of powerful thing. And I can tell you, it is a lot of work to send that weekly email. It is a lot of work to, to make sure that you have the right stats. But when we miss weeks, I'm getting emails. What's going on? What's our average? I know that we lost a driver this week. How much is it going to bring our percentage down? And I'm not talking about just people in HR. I mean, I have mechanics coming up to me saying, "Hey, I know we're working on retention. I just got to tell you, one of our drivers was really upset because, something didn't get fixed on his truck, and I don't want this to hurt our numbers." So it's become so commonplace in all of our departments that we really rely on it every single week.
The powerful thing, and we're going to keep, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, and it really kind of just changed the way our departments have communicated. Before, when a driver would quit, there was probably a little blaming, I'm going to be honest, and sometimes, obviously, not sometimes, most of the time, safety and dispatch don't always agree on stuff, and, they kind of have different motives, and it was kind of, I'm going to blame dispatch this week for this driver leaving. But as things progressed, that didn't happen, and the managers started kind of opening up to each other, being like, hey, we really screwed this up. What do we do wrong? What can we do? So instead of like, man, I got to go down and talk to the operations manager, he's going to be defensive because I got to talk to him about why this guy left. Now it's like, oh, okay, all right, yep, you know what? We screwed that up, or no, that's not what happened. And our communication has just really become better all around, and it kind of stemmed from these weekly emails.
Excellent. And a number that everybody needs to know every week, there are certain key performance indicators, and related to this, everybody needs to know how many empty trucks we have and what our current turnover rate is. Otherwise, like you say, they're going to think, oh, it's recruiting's problem. Well, it's not recruiting's problem. It's a company problem. You guys have brought it to a company level, and everybody's concerned, and look what happens. So let's switch. So that was proactive communication, but you also have proactive touch points so that we are, identifying drivers that have an issue before it becomes so big that they want to quit. Can you tell us about this in about 5 minutes or so?
Sure. So before orientation, we usually have either our driver trainer, someone in dispatch, or the safety department call and welcome the driver, let them know that they're excited to see him in orientation, and just kind of have outreach from someone other than the recruiter. And then when orientation comes, we actually, one of the things that we did in January was decided to hire a full-time driver trainer. And we were lucky enough to have one of our senior drivers come off of the road and become a leader in our recruiting and HR department. And he, from day one until day 3, when our orientation is over, he's with those guys every step of the way. And what that has done is given us more time to really concentrate on things that drivers are struggling with, and kind of not worry about some of the ho-hum procedures, so to speak, of stuff, and really be like, look, our drivers are struggling with PeopleNet, or we need to make sure that they understand how to run the reefers. So that kind of happened. And then the other thing is, on their last day of orientation, the drivers have a private meeting with our driver managers or with their driver managers. And they go over expectations about, hey, this is what I expect from you. And in turn, this is what you can expect from me. You can expect that I'm going to have clear communication. And at the same time, they say, do you need some time off? Do you have special dates that are coming up this year? Which has been a really big hit. And we have drivers walking out of orientation saying, wow, I've never been asked what my first day off is going to be. It's always, when can you run? When can you go out? So we've kind of flip-flopped it a little bit. And once that goes past and they get into their first week of their first run, we have someone from our payroll department call after they receive their first check. And that person calls and says, do you understand your paycheck? We're a carrier that pays per mile. Sometimes that can get really confusing. We have per diem, so sometimes drivers don't understand that. And they're explaining all that stuff to make sure that they understand exactly, what they're making. In the second week, our shop staff calls them. They want to make sure that they're happy with their truck. Do they understand the DVIRs? Is there any issues with it? And by the way, every time one of the department reaches a driver, we have one email that goes out for each driver. So as soon as the shop finds out that he's happy with his truck, but he needs his inverter fixed, it goes on this master email. So then the next week, when the operations manager calls to talk to him about his lanes and his schedules, the first thing he can say is, hey, I want to make sure you got your inverter, fixed from last week. Is that taken care of? And we're just trying to prove to the driver, we're not just words. We're trying to make sure that you're taken care of. Our operations manager checks to make sure that they're happy with their lane. They review any PTO request or paid time off requests that they have coming up, and just generally make sure that they're okay with their driver manager, that they're getting the communication that they need. Then the next week, we have our HR department calls and follows up with benefits, make sure that they fill out their applications. At that point, things have kind of settled in, and we can kind of review what's happening with the driver. In the fifth week, my department calls and we review mostly PeopleNet and our DriveCam, because those are usually the two pieces of technology that need a little bit of maintenance on the trucks, and sometimes people need extra time to understand them. So we usually go over that stuff. And then the other thing that we started doing was telling them, hey, just so you know, you're going to be eligible for your first safety bonus on this date. And we're trying to kind of soften the safety department as someone that's just not calling when you're in trouble, but also just calling to reach out and say, hey, we're here for you. This is a good program. And then the final week, our recruiter calls back and follows up and kind of just reviews everything that the master email has given. We want to make sure that any issues were followed up on, and she kind of does that to make sure that there's no loose ends. And then that's when we ask for referrals, because we have a very high-paying driver referral program, which has really helped us out. So, and it's very strict.
Right, protocol. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we really hold our department managers, we hold their feet to the fire with this. And by the end of the week, if you haven't updated your driver master, you're getting emails from me, you're getting calls from me. What can I do? Do you need us to help you set time aside? And it was a challenge at first. That's a lot. But my shop director said it perfectly. He said, this is like preventative maintenance. These are little oil changes before we have a big breakdown. And he's totally right. That's exactly what it is. And once we kind of changed our mindset to that and realized, hey, I'm going to spend 5 minutes with this driver and it's going to be, a long-term success, it became easier to make those phone calls and to follow up.
Absolutely, because you're going to get phone calls, but now they're having proactively and fun. The other thing that I want to point out on the slide before we go to the next one, because there has been some challenges. There's been some hurt come along, and so we'll talk about that. And by the way, I want to remind folks, if you have a question, please type it in, and we'll take as many of these questions as we can with Amanda. That meeting with the fleet manager during orientation that happens early in orientation, not right at the very end and all that, that helps to build that entire working relationship and commitment between that driver and that fleet manager, which changes the entire outcome of the work product that you get. That is critical meeting for that. So
Absolutely.
Let's go. So let's talk about it. There's some things that have hurt as you've gone along and some things that have helped. And by the way, when you get to the what helps, Scott Ray has sent fantastic job reducing your turnover. What is your strategy for keeping staff engaged long term? People have a tendency to become complacent once the goal is achieved. I think you're going to talk about that in point 2, but let's go to what hurt first.
Sure. Well, the biggest thing that challenged us was in April, we decided to implement accident event recorders in all of our trucks. And obviously, there are a lot of drivers that don't feel comfortable with that. And we did have drivers leave that, had been here for actually a while. And it hurt our turnover this summer. But in reality, we realized that those people weren't kind of living up to our standards. And so we just kind of brushed it off, got back up there and started again. So, but I can tell you that since we started this retention program, when we did implement the cameras, it was very thought out. It was very methodical. We met one-on-one, face-to-face with every single driver in our fleet. And probably a couple years ago, we may not have done that. But because we're keeping, retention right in front of our face, it changed the way that we implemented, a new safety program. And then the other thing is what you just said, is keeping people focused. The emails help a lot. We have certain taglines that we say that, Kelly has taught us. One specifically is live above the line. Colin always tells us, run this company like you own it. So we're constantly trying to remind people, don't forget this. This is what we're doing every single week. And we have a couple different ways that we do that. When we met our first goal, we had a big party. We had a big ice cream sundae party. And of course, it was the middle of summer. It was like 120 degrees. So it was very well received. The weekly emails, which we've talked about, are probably the biggest focus because they're constantly seeing that. But also, anytime my numbers dip, or when we went through the cameras and we lost quite a few people over the summer, I really push our CEO, Colin Stewart, to get involved. And I'll tell him, I'm not sending these numbers out until you have something ready to follow. And he'll go down and talk to a certain department if he has to do face-to-face. He always follows up with an email. It might just be, hey guys, you did really good this week. Or sometimes when, we kind of got mud on our face and we lost some drivers, it's the other way around. Like, let's keep trying. The biggest thing is that the CEO and the CFO specifically are constantly involved in this, because when they see that they're constantly buying into it, it's very easy for everyone else to follow. So that has been a really big focus. And the last one is we try to give people their own opportunity to appreciate drivers. So we came up with, it's called an Attaboy program. We have a Loves right down the street. We bought several $10 Loves cards and just gave them out to employees and said, hey, if you see a driver doing something great, give them some Loves cards, give them some Attaboys. And it kind of empowered people that normally probably wouldn't have the opportunity to do that, to really kind of show, any sort of gratitude or respect to a driver. And that's actually been a really big thing. The other thing that we kind of maintain focus on, and I know it's not listed, is just recently, over the last 30 days, we have added onto our annual reviews for our employees a section about treating drivers appropriately. So now all of our employees actually are being reviewed on their interactions with the drivers, and are they giving it their full attention, or are they just not taking it seriously? So every chance that we get, management is constantly talking about retention, how we're treating drivers. And after a while, it kind of becomes just part of your day and part of your week. It's work, but it does kind of become that focus.
Wow. Amanda, you have you guys just rock. And people have asked for quite a while for information regarding driver retention, and man, we could go even further, I would think. And
yeah.
Man, to have you come back when the rolling average gets below the 35%, but I think it's powerful to note that implementing the things they learned in the seminar immediately reduce turnover, and they're already below their goal of reducing their turnover rate by 50%. Before, by the way, it was asked, how do I get the break-even calculator? I will send that. I'll have Laura send that out with the link to the recording, so everybody will get that. I want to give a quick shout-out to a few of the folks that I see on here. Tom Lansing, good to see you, sir. Wendy Bartz, good to see you on as well. Travis Rust, I saw you on there. Look forward to our conversation this week. And are coming up here. Folks, thank you so much for being a part of the Recruiting Insider. And so as I mentioned, our next one is happening on September 13th. And I'll be doing that live from Nashville. And with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off. I see people going ahead and falling off now. Thank you so much for being on here, and we will see you again next month.
Thank you.
Wendy, I'm sorry, Amanda, thank you so much. This was excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.